Our next case is out of Florida, and it mixes a deadly game of drugs and playing with a gun that ended up with an 18-year-old woman dead and her 54-year-old boyfriend charged with her killing. Michael Hutto is charged with manslaughter in the death of Laura Duncan. Michael is one of the founders of the Salt Line apparel brand. Salt Line is best known for beachwear, surfing clothes, board shorts, and clothes for like fishing and diving. The man made millions on this. There were 4 friends who started this clothing line in Jacksonville, Florida. It is very well known in Florida. He sold his part of the business in 2013 and again made millions. There are a lot of things about this case that I find troubling. I also find it troubling that he's only been charged so far with manslaughter. We're going to get into the details, Danny, and then I want your feedback on what you think was going on at the time. So these two were dating. He's 54. She's 18. Her parents didn't like it at all. I can understand why. So the two had checked in to the Hilton Oceanfront Resort on Singer Island, which is near Palm Beach. And they were ultimately headed to the Keys to go hang out with some friends. Now, to understand, Danny, what happened in that hotel room and what was going on between the two of them, basically, if you look at his mugshot, he looks like a washed up surfer, a 54-year-old guy, and this beautiful 18-year-old woman with the rest of her life ahead of her. So I'm going to split this storyline into 2 parallel tracks because what cops didn't know when they were working each of the cases, one, the dead woman, and one who would end up being the suspect, things were going on almost parallel, and you had 2 different police departments dealing with both of these people. So I think if I explain the case that way, it might help. So we're going to be linear, but in 2 tracks. All right. We're going to start with Laura's parents. Of course, they were very upset that she was dating this guy, and they didn't like that she took off for the weekend with him of all people. So on October 26th, Laura's father calls the sheriff's department and requests a welfare check of his daughter, but she wasn't found by authorities until 3 days later on October 29th. So we're going to fill in the gap of what was going on here. Laura's parents told the police that they believed that Michael was giving her drugs to keep her sedated. That's from their perspective. The father said that when he last spoke to his daughter, she sounded out of character and like she was on drugs. So then what happens is the parents start to get even more worried because Laura is not responding to their calls or texts. And the father jumps in and does a little detective work, and he takes her cell phone. He tracks the location of his daughter's cell phone to this hotel. And he calls the police back and he says, I'm telling you, something is wrong. This is where her phone is right now. Please go to the hotel and tell me that my daughter is okay. They go to the hotel, and that's where they find Laura Duncan dead, shot in the abdomen. And her boyfriend, Michael, is nowhere to be found, Danny. So here's what's interesting. Michael, according to the police, left his cell phone, his wallet, and his ID. He basically took off. And he even tells police later that he just took off. When you look at this, we haven't even gotten to what Michael what happens next in Michael's life on this parallel track. So what are you thinking at this point? I mean, the parents clearly knew something was wrong. They thought the daughter was in danger. Police find her dead.
Yeah, well, obviously you've got a situation where toxicology is going to be really, really important to know what was in her body at the time of her death. She might have been so far out of it that there's no way they were playing this game that he alleges they're playing, because quite frankly, you don't die being shot in the abdomen. You don't just fall over and die. So, without knowing what the crime scene looks like, did she ever get up off the ground or off the bed or wherever it was that they found her, or did she just lay there and die without trying to reach a phone or crawl to the door? It's very different than being shot in the head or in the heart or taking a fatal shot. And so that's really puzzling to me. And I just wonder how far out of it, how badly had she been drugged? And, was it the date rape drug that he was using on her? I don't know. But that's really important because, they're looking at it as a manslaughter, and it's all based on his story. And his story doesn't make sense.
No, his story does not make sense. And also, you bring something up that I find morally troubling here. If when she was shot in the abdomen, as you say, she probably wouldn't have died had she received help.
Correct.
The obligation was on Michael to call for help and to get her emergency medical services immediately. Right. And the fact that he didn't do that, I believe, makes him more responsible for her death, not just in the shooting, but in the fact that he didn't act responsibly to save her life.
Sure. And he panicked, and it also goes towards state of mind. If it were truly an accident, why wouldn't you take those steps? Why wouldn't you, a reasonable person be, oh my God, look what I accidentally did. I mean, accidental shootings happen. And generally speaking, the person that did that doesn't panic and flee with no intention of doing anything to aid the victim, as he did. So that is a very puzzling part of it.
And had she survived and it really was an accident, she could have corroborated that. Possibly, right?
Yes.
Let me put it to you this way. He would be no worse off than he is now. In fact, he's worse off now by his actions if it was indeed accidental, that this decision was a fatal decision for Laura. Yeah. Okay. Now I said, we wanted to talk about the parallel track. So this is what's going on in Laura's life, right? Parents are worried, send the police over, sheriffs find her dead. They know that there was a man in there because he's paid for the room and all his ID is in there. So where is he? While the cops are figuring out their situation down in Palm Beach, cops up in the Jacksonville area have an entirely different case on their hands. This is what's incredible. So 3 hours north, that's where Jacksonville is, from the scene of the crime, police are dealing with a guy who's acting crazy and saying crazy things. This would be Michael Hutto. Michael apparently ran out of the hotel room after Laura was shot, and he drove in his car and drove until he ran out of gas. He ran out of gas somewhere near a St. Augustine gas station. Didn't make it into the gas station. So apparently the police get a call that there is a guy passed out in a car that is illegally parked, meaning there's something wrong about it, and it's outside a gas station, and he looks passed out. Call the cops. Take him to the Jacksonville hospital. He is described as twitching and making delusional comments and crying with his eyes rolled back to his head. When you hear something like that, what do you think, Danny?
Well, I mean, he's obviously under the influence of something. But more importantly, again, you've got, not only did he panic and run out of the hotel room, but he's spent at least 3 hours driving and thinking about what he's done. So he's alert enough to drive himself, 3 hours away. And during that period of time, he's thinking of nothing except for what happened. And yet he still doesn't call anyone. He still doesn't try to send help there. He still doesn't do anything to make it right. So again, how could that be viewed as an accident? That doesn't make sense to me.
No, it doesn't make sense to me either. So he allegedly told, because remember, police had to take him to the hospital along with the EMTs. He allegedly told police and people at the hospital, "Oh my God, I think I hurt my Gracie." And then he started crying. Okay, if you didn't know what was going on in Palm Beach, right, down on Singer Island, you might think this guy's having like a real, drug-induced episode.
Yeah.
Okay. Michael begins to leave the hospital. By the time he's about to leave the hospital, cops in Jacksonville and cops in Palm Beach have figured out these two cases are connected. and they stop him before he leaves the hospital, and he is arrested immediately. And according to court records, he told police when confronted about what happened to Laura that it was all an accident. He said that Laura was indeed his girlfriend and that they were playing inside their hotel room as if they were shooting their fingers with a gun. Okay, well, that's really bizarre. And fingers don't kill people unless they're the trigger of a gun, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so Michael goes on and tells detectives that Laura was sitting on the counter of the bathroom when he pointed the gun at her and fired, shot her, and that's when he took off. Here's what I don't understand. He's been charged with manslaughter. He has not been charged with murder. How is this not murder? Second-degree murder, but not manslaughter.
Yeah, they're going to have a hard case to prove because there's no witnesses, obviously, and they have to somehow defeat his story, his account of what happened. Somehow they have to overcome that. So in a case like this, it can become a circumstantial case. And you could look at patterns of conduct, past behaviors. If I were the investigator, I'd want to talk to every woman who had ever been involved with this man. And I'd want to see what patterns of conduct. And again, I mentioned the Phil Spector case earlier. That's how he was convicted. He had a history of sticking his gun in women's mouths. So, that pattern of conduct, it removes that, it was a terrible, tragic accident. And that's hopefully what they're going to be looking at in this case is what is this man, what is his past behavior been like? And does it indicate that this might not have been just an accident?
I don't understand why the police are accepting his version of events and that he's only been charged with manslaughter. Is it possible after forensics, DNA, other crime scene evaluations, his history, is it possible that they may charge him with something more serious than manslaughter after this?
Yeah, sure. Until he's convicted of the manslaughter, it's still wide open to enhance the charges. And hopefully, it could be that they've just charged him with that while they're continuing to investigate. But I don't know. Yeah, I just don't know. I hope that it's not a matter of, we have no way to prove that his version isn't true, so this is all we'll do.
Yeah, I'm very disappointed in the charges. I'm also worried because this is a rich guy in Florida who's well known in that beach community. And
Right.
I hope that his status and that his wealth, if he still has any money left, that didn't somehow have a bearing on the decision of what to charge him with. I really hope it didn't influence that.
Well, it probably did to a certain degree, at least, because I'm sure that there was at least one or two high-powered attorneys that became involved in this immediately. And when you get that kind of horsepower coming in and representing and being the advocates for this person, then that is going to it could change the direction of a case. It could I don't know. We might want to cut this.
Okay, Danny, here's another way to look at it. So Michael appeared in court via a video link on Monday in Palm Beach County, and the judge set bond at $225,000. That is not a lot of money, especially if you only have to put down 10% cash, right? So that guy's walking.
That's true, but in a manslaughter case, I'm sure that bail scale is appropriate.
And, had it been murder, then the bail would be higher.
Yes. So there's only so much they can do with something like that. And without knowing anything about the investigation itself, if they've charged this man with manslaughter, which they have, then they must really feel that they have no way to prove, even if they believe that it's a level above manslaughter. They just probably don't have any way to prove it at this point.
Well, in addition to manslaughter, Hutto has also been charged with possession of a weapon during a felony. So we'll keep an eye on this one. It's very disturbing. And I feel very badly for Laura's parents, who probably are feeling right now like justice was not served. And when they called for help for a welfare check 3 days earlier, it appears that Laura was indeed alive. And if someone had just taken their concerns more seriously and acted more quickly, Laura may still be alive today.